Student Venue Band. It's a great day, and we would like to invite you to stand and join us in singing today. Yay!
When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know, I won't be shaken, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Strength no longer has a place to hide. I am not a captive to the lies. I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. I won't be shaken, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. There's power in your name. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. no one excluded, and you give your love away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So low, still your love fought me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you gave your love to me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, the hurt and the wounded, no one excluded. Said you gave your love away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm not, leaves the 99, the hurt and the wounded, no one excluded, and you give your love away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. sister. The only way to be fulfilling is with love that's healing. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister?
Good morning. Hello. There we go. Good morning. We are so glad you're here, whether you're in person or online. When you came in, you should have received a bulletin. Take a few minutes to check out during the service. There's some helpful things in there for you. If you got kiddos, birth through 12th, we got something just happening right now in family venues. Right now, they're right up there. So if you have kiddos, they're right up there. Look at them. Hello. Once you get them checked in, they're going to have a little great time. When you drop them off, you'll get a 4-digit code. If we need anything, they'll flash on that little red board up there. Right up there. And if you've got a baby or a toddler who needs a little break, we have a wiggle room just right outside there. Feel free to stop in there anytime you need. Also, every Thursday, we have bar church at Mother's Brewing Company downtown. Simple way to reconnect throughout the week. 6:30 p.m. We'd love to see you there. Woo!
Our student venue is leading the way this morning. From the band to tech to the welcome team and even the coffee bar, our students are running it all. So make sure to take a moment and encourage them and let them know that they're great, they're doing great. We're so proud of them and grateful for the next generation.
Easter Sunday is just 1 week away on April 5th. We've got 2 services at 8:30 and 1 at 10 a.m. This is one of the easiest times of the year to invite someone, so start thinking now. Friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. If this is your home church, we'd love for you to be a part of making the day incredible. Consider sit one, serve one, attend a service, and serve out another one. We still need a few more volunteers, so if you're interested, reach out to Josh or Amy, and they'll get you plugged in. And one simple way to help, if you're able, come to the 8:30 service to make more room for guests at 10 o'clock. Plus, right after the 10 o'clock service, Family Venue is hosting a big Easter egg hunt. So bring the whole family and stick around for that.
Just saying. So to stay connected, head to thevenues.com or .org to give, sign up for groups, or see what's coming up, and follow us on social media if you don't want to miss anything. If today's your first time, well, welcome. We're really glad you're here, but before you leave, stop by the First Timers desk right in the lobby. We've got a gift waiting for you. That's all for today. Have an amazing Sunday, and we'll get back to the music.
Good morning. My name is Moira Olmstead. If you do not know me, I am a mom of some pretty crazy preschoolers here. I am also a volunteer for Students Venue, and I'm a 5th grade teacher. So I love the middle school years. It is my passion. Before I was a teacher, I was a deeply involved youth grouper, and my experience is what makes me so passionate about empowering this next generation. Not because I went to the best youth group in the world, but because I know what it's like to buy in 100% and then take on a guilt complex and social rules in exchange for an unconditional love and a community that doesn't always care about who you are. I know what it's like to sit second row during a youth conference after leading worship and playing insanely fun games, to hear your youth pastor condemn homosexuality while staring into the eyes of a diverse and vulnerable crowd. I was eventually placed on the leadership team of that youth group, not because I aligned with their mission, but because my social influence and my theological pushback week after week became too dangerous to exist without structural accountability. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the best compliment I would ever receive in my life. He literally called me on the phone to tell me that. At the venues, we believe students deserve to know the love of God and their community without manipulation, exclusion, and shame. It is a joy to volunteer with these students and hear them share every week about social justice, how to include everybody, especially in a world that tells us it's a Christian or a political value to exclude people. Today, our wonderful student venue is going to perform a song that says just that. The truth in the darkness and judgment. I'm so sorry. The truth in the darkness and judgment is that you deserve to belong, and that your value as a wonderfully made human being cannot be taken away. I love these people, and you should volunteer with them. Please do.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let the lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And someone will come running, and I know I'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, as your wake up and you rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
You will be
The end of that song, that you will be found, is such an important lesson for us to hear, and it's so awesome to hear it from our students, by the way. Let's give it up for them one more time, by the way, as they're exiting right now. We really do believe that what happens down in kids' venue and students' venue isn't the secondary act here. It is what happens here at the venues. And I'm so thankful to see the way that that plays out and the way that we get to participate in that this morning. You know, recently I have been doing a lot of thinking and reading about AI, about what it is, how it's being used, when it's appropriate for us to use it, both personally and as the venues. And let me just say this up front. I have no idea. There's a lot that is still going on. I know that it's more than a search engine. And I also know that it seems like people are having a harder and harder time determining like what is real and what is fake, and what is AI generated and what's generated by people. And I know that my social media platforms are getting more and more filled with just trash. It's just like YouTube video after YouTube video that are just AI generated. And it's harder to find things that actually make sense. I also know that we've made some pretty big jumps in recent years. One of the tests that people will use to determine how AI is being used right now is called the Will Smith eating spaghetti test. I don't know if you've actually seen this, but I'm going to show you a couple of these to see the difference. In 2023, it looked like this, which I'm not going to lie is kind of nightmare fuel, right? It barely looks like Will Smith. It definitely doesn't look like spaghetti. And the quality was pretty substandard. You fast forward that, though, to 2025, and you will see this. Slight difference. Yeah, a lot of difference, right? It's pretty remarkable. There's no wonder that it's harder than ever for us to figure out what is true and what is false, what is real and what is not. And that's not even to start mentioning the debate that has gone on with concern to the environmental problems of AI, the things like data centers, or the things like the displacement of creative that have happened. But one of the reasons it has gotten so much better is because it has been given more and more rules about how it's supposed to be used. In fact, actually, this is no joke. Before 2025, Will Smith actually did a video of himself eating spaghetti, and AI has been trained on those things. But what I've realized about it is this. Fundamentally, AI can only really spit out what it has been trained on. That you put garbage in, you get garbage out. And a couple of weeks ago, on International Women's Day, Maritza Cabeza Ludina was talking about the ways that women are often left out of the financial markets around the world. And she noted this, and I think it's really important to kind of set the framing of a lot of this. She says, the potential of AI to revolutionize industries is enormous, but so is its potential to amplify societal biases and reinforce stereotypes, particularly those related to gender. They learn from vast data sets, but these data sets often reflect historical inequalities. In other words, the tools and the rules that were used to create videos like that of Will Smith eating spaghetti end up becoming the same rules and tools that may end up causing other things as well. For example, it ends up sometimes being the reasons that a bank will determine who to give a home loan to, and only magnify the inequalities like redlining that started off way before that. It looks into things like college admissions and realizes that historically, the people who did really well at Ivy League schools were people who played lacrosse, which abnormally is white cis straight dudes. And so it re-amplified those inequalities time and time again. You see, the AI was given rules that it needed to follow. And despite the fact that sometimes AI can seem brilliant, it can only choose to follow the rules that it was given. I share that to say this, that in a lot of ways, the ways that we oftentimes were brought up were very much like we were AI. We were, many of us, brought up with a faith or a tradition or a religious heritage or religious stories where we were taught the same thing. We were taught that we had certain rules that we had to follow. And as long as we follow these exact rules, then we'll understand what love looks like. And it's precisely this reason that we are finishing up our series today called Love Doesn't Say That, by thinking about the ways that many of us were taught that love looks like a set of rules. That if we follow this very specific set of rules, that everything will be okay. And by the way, this is not to say that all rules are bad. Rules like don't lie or don't steal were probably useful. But when life gets messy, or when we start to realize that those rules don't always fit, sometimes it can be a little bit complicated. And so it's into that space that I want to share with you this idea that I want us to be thinking about today and this week. As you're out maybe getting your Easter outfit, or tonight as you're watching the end of the Elite Eight, or whatever it is that you're doing, I have this thought that I want us to kind of focus in on, and that's this. That love isn't just a rule book. Because life isn't a straight journey. I want us to sit there for a second. I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important that love isn't just a rule book. Because life isn't just a straight journey. If life was a straight journey, if everyone's life went A, B, C, D, then us having a rule book style faith would make all kinds of sense. You see, AI is actually pretty good at doing things that are straightforward. It's the reason that I have AI manage my calendar so that I don't double book myself. It can follow the rules, but our lives are so much more complicated, right? There aren't rules for a lot of pieces in our lives. What happens when someone at your job, maybe your boss, tells you that you need to do something that ethically you just can't do? And so you speak up about that, because that's what you were taught to do. And then suddenly, rent comes due. And you don't have a job, and your landlord won't take, but I stood up to my boss as payment. It doesn't follow that way. What do you do when the stories about faith that you were taught maybe as a child got co-opted to things like, don't worry about the immigrant, don't worry about the poor, don't worry about the refugee, but instead justified things that aren't acceptable and that you know in your heart? How do you deal with that? You see, rules don't have a good way to process through that information. So today what I'd like to do is I'd like to spend about 20 or 25 minutes this morning just kind of together thinking about what it would look like to live in a world where love isn't a rule book, but rather where we just acknowledge that life is a journey and that we need each other on this journey. Just like the song was saying, you are not alone. We need people together on this path. In this season of the Christian calendar, if you went to a church that was more liturgical maybe growing up, there was a thing called a Christian calendar. There's some dates and events that we celebrate every year. Like, for example, next weekend is Easter. And, in December we have Christmas. And we kind of know some of these. But the Christian calendar has a whole slew of other dates that people would celebrate. And the one that we would celebrate today is one called Palm Sunday. Okay? And it's the beginning of the week that would ultimately culminate in Easter. It's what we might call the Holy Week. So if you see things like that being posted on social media, that's what it's talking about. But I think today, being Palm Sunday, is a perfect day to talk about these things together, because I think we can actually see how Jesus went through this space where everyone was saying there are certain rules that you have to follow, and instead that actually maybe there's a pathway of love that is the better way forward. When I was growing up, on this Sunday, the Sunday before Easter, we would often have the little kids walk down the aisles of our sanctuary with palm leaves, and they would decorate the aisles, right? And I'll be honest with you, it was cute. By the way, that's not why we had Students Venue take over this morning. We had them take over this morning because they're awesome, right? They did a great job with that. But it was one of those things that was cute, and we could kind of see the little kids do the things, and people would take pictures of them. And the kids would sing these songs, and they'd be like, Hosanna, 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 and it was great. But while this was often performed as a very childish activity, I want to think about how this process here is actually so much more than that. There's this story that is told in all four of the Gospels. So if you just got a Bible and you were like looking at the New Testament and you were like, okay, there's these first four books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are the stories that are mostly about Jesus. There are only a handful of stories that show up in all four of them. And the story about Palm Sunday is one that actually does. And in the Luke version, the one that we're going to be looking at today, it has some very specific language that I want us to listen to and to think about. But before we do that, I want to kind of give you some backstory. What happens here is that Jesus is getting ready to come into Jerusalem. And so he says to his followers, his disciples, he says, hey, I want you to go into the town and get me a donkey, which is a weird request, right? I want you to go in and get me this donkey, and just whenever you find someone who owns a donkey, tell them it's for Jesus, and they'll be like, yeah, that's good. Okay, so they go in, they get their donkey, they come back, and they bring it to him, and he rides into Jerusalem as people do the thing that the kids did. They laid palm branches down on the road so it'd be easier for the donkey to walk on. But I want you to hear what Marcus Borg, who is a theologian, said before he passed away in 2015 about this. And I think it actually reframes a lot of this. He says this: on Sunday, Palm Sunday, Jesus enters Jerusalem from the east in a procession riding a donkey cheered on by his followers. Jesus prearranged this way of entering the city. In modern language, it was a planned political demonstration. I share that with you, by the way, not to turn up the temperature right now, okay? Because I know that right now there's a lot of temperature raising about a lot of things, and I get that, right? I actually want to share it with you as a way to turn down the temperature. Because, for example, I know many of you were at the No Kings protest yesterday, right? There was a great crowd of that. Yeah. And I want to share this with you because I know that right now there's a lot of political animosity going on. But I want you to enter this picture and to see that Jesus walked into the similar picture and processed love through that picture, okay? Because I think sometimes the reason that the Bible is so useful for me is this. When the temperature on life gets turned all the way up, it reminds me that I'm not alone in it. That Jesus walked through this and was able to find the path of love through it. That Jesus actually did it first. So it's in this setting that I think we can clearly see the ways that some people try to make love into a rule book, and that Jesus says, no, love is a pathway. And it starts in Luke chapter 19, and it says this: all of his, meaning Jesus' followers, began to shout and sing as they walked along, praising God for all the wonderful miracles they had seen. Blessing on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven. But some of the Pharisees, who were the religious leaders of the day, among the crowd said, "Teacher, rebuke your followers for saying things like that." In other words, the religious people of the day, when this political protest was going on, went to Jesus and they said, "Tell your followers to keep it down. tell them to be quiet? Isn't it already enough going on? Now, if this is your first time hearing this story, it might seem kind of odd. It looks at first like the people are praising God, and the Pharisees, who are the religious leaders of the day, hear them praising God and are like, shut up. But the Pharisees were religious leaders of the day who would have had a whole lot of social influence. They didn't have necessarily like the political ramifications. They didn't have like political offices, but they often had that way of kind of massaging the political tensions of the day, and they had a voice that would often happen through the political elites of the time. And it makes me wonder sometimes why they would want this. I mean, realistically, and I know this may burst some people's bubble, but Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a Jew, okay? And Jesus would have been worshiping the same God that the Pharisees, who were Jews, would have been worshiping. And the people who would have been singing Hosanna and praise at Jesus would have been likely singing them to the same God that the Pharisees worshiped. So why in the world would they have told these people to be quiet? Well, I could be wrong about this, but maybe there's something here that we need to dig into just a little bit to get the fuller picture of this. We remember that the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in Hebrew and Greek with a little bit of Aramaic. Dr. Diana Butler Bass, who's an American theologian and historian, shares something that I think actually might provide some good insight here. She notes this, that Hosanna and Alleluia are not the same. Hosanna is the transliteration of the Hebrew word Hosiana, meaning, oh, save now, or please save. In other words, the crowd at the procession wasn't shouting praises to Jesus. The crowd was begging Jesus to save them. It is possible that the religious leaders of the day weren't upset because of what the theology of the crowd was saying, but rather because it threatened their ability to have a seat at the table of power. If the people were crying out, save us, they weren't doing so in the religious way that many of us were brought up. They weren't saying like, oh, I need to walk down the middle of an aisle and say a prayer. Instead, they were making a political statement that was saying, we are facing incredible problems where all of the power seems to be allocated in the hands of very few, and we are being oppressed. So please save us from getting the short end of the stick. And it's into that space I want to share with you the first principle of how this love moves from a rule book to a pathway, and that's this. That rules become a rule book when someone benefits from keeping things the way they are. I want that to sit for just a second with you. That rules become a rule book when someone benefits from keeping things the way they are. In this story, the religious leaders immediately push back on Jesus, and they tell him to stop. Why? Well, I think it's really helpful to see what Dr. Justin Howell said about this. He said, within this context of the gospel, it is the acclamation of Jesus' kingship that these Pharisees are opposing. Now, this word acclamation is not a word that we use a lot, but I think it's actually really helpful here. You see, at the time, what acclamation would mean is that when a Roman ruler would come in, everyone who saw the Roman ruler would basically like heap praises on them in one voice. Oh, Caesar, hail Caesar, you're amazing, right? It's kind of like the way that when I was a kid, every day of school, at the very beginning, we would acclamate the flag as we would stand and say the pledge. And there would be this sort of notion that we would all say these things. And so when the people were unifying in a voice of acclamation about Jesus, this wasn't a theological statement as much as it was a juxtaposition between Jesus and the Roman government. Well, it doesn't say this exactly. I can also see the possibility, by the way, that there were some of the Pharisees who just wanted them to keep it down, saying things like, you know, everything's okay right now. Just stop the rabble-rousing, right? Aren't we okay? A few years ago, I read a book called The Price of Privilege. And it's one of the best books I've ever read. It was written by Dr. Madeline Levine. And in it, she wrote about how she's a therapist in San Diego, and she had seen an uptick in the number of kids who were coming from very rich families who were coming to her for therapy. And it wasn't just because they could suddenly afford therapy. It was rather because the mental anguish that they were facing had seen an uptick. And she said something that I think actually the Pharisees may have understood too. She said, parents may avoid rocking the boat due to the fear of threatening their financial security or lifestyle. She noted that often children need to take risks and they need parents to be seen as people who are striving. But when the situation is that you're already at the apex of the mountain, the only place to go is down. And so why would you rock the boat if the only thing that you can do is drown? And so she said, when we're facing all of these privileges, we have to be careful that we don't allow people to just find themselves in the same space they've always been. She said people ended up just following the rule book because they didn't want to rock the boat. I will say as a side note that this is not to say that all power is bad or that all rules are bad. There are definitely times when rules are necessary. When I was a teacher, it was important that there were certain rules, right? It was important because there needed to be some dynamic of power that if a kid was harming another kid, that there was someone who would step in, or if there were school policies in place. You know, when I think about rules, there's actually a movie that always comes to my mind. And despite the fact that this is the Easter season, it's actually a Christmas movie. Anybody think of a Christmas movie that really involves rules? It's one of the best Christmas movies of all time. Close. They guessed Die Hard. Beg your pardon? The Santa Claus would also be a great guess. It's an even better Christmas movie than that. It is Gremlins. And there were 3 rules that they said, these little creatures called Mogwai, that you couldn't do with them. And just in case you haven't seen Gremlins in a long time, I'm going to show you what the 3 rules are. Take a look at this.
No. What happened? He hates bright lights. You know, there's some things I forgot to tell you guys, and they're really important. Number 1, he hates bright lights, we know that. But you gotta keep him out of the sunlight. Sunlight will kill him. Number 2, keep him away from water. Don't give him any water to drink. And whatever you do, don't give him a bath. And probably the most important thing, don't ever feed him after midnight.
So I don't mean to spoil a movie for you that's 42 years old. But basically the thing is, if you couldn't hear the 3 rules, they are don't feed them after midnight, never get them wet, and never expose them to sunlight. Okay? And the reason is because what would happen to these cute little creatures is that if you did that, they would turn into gremlins that would actually terrorize the town of Kingston Falls. And like I said, sometimes rules aren't a bad thing. We want humans to be in charge, not gremlins, right? Nor do we want AI to be in charge. But there is a difference between rules and rule books. Rule books get codified. People feel like they're not a living document. If you violate a rule book, then you end up getting sued or going to jail. And so what I really want us to think about is the rules about who do they keep in power. There are many times that in the times of Jesus that people thought the ruling government was really good. And there were a lot of ways that it was. The Roman government helped provide better roads and better education systems, and they enslaved 30% of their population. And they would often engage in wars of choice where they would just go conquer another country. And for many of us, we may have grown up in a belief system that looked like this, that said we needed to follow a certain rule book. And there were many people who that rule book worked for. The ideas of the rule book saying that you have to go to church every Sunday, or you can't have premarital sex, or you can only listen to Christian music, or you have to stand for the national anthem, or you have to always do your homework before you go out and play, are all not necessarily bad rules. But sometimes, if they got codified and it became a system of punishment or discipline, it can become complicated. And oftentimes it's because those rule books don't keep their end of the bargain. We hear things like, you can be whatever you want to be, and then we push back on that a little bit and say, well, I want to, and people say, no, that's not okay. I mentioned an example of this is the fact that some people, the rule book that they were told is that bodies look a certain way and that you're born into a certain body. And this weekend, we actually celebrate Trans Day of Visibility. And I mention this specifically Because International Trans Day of Visibility is a day that we celebrate the fact that our trans friends don't need to hide. We live in a society where often our trans friends are told the same thing that Jesus was told when he was coming into Jerusalem. Just keep it down. You don't have to change things. You can just stay in the rule book the way that it was. But we want to say this morning that those rules, if they don't make sense, you don't have to live into them anymore. And so whether it's our trans friends or those who feel broken down by society or those who feel spiritually homeless right now or those who aren't sure where they are, I want to leave us with one final thing that pushes into this teaching this morning, and that's this. That while power wants a rule book, love requires a pathway. That while power wants a rule book, love requires a pathway. Look, rule books are neat and tidy. They're easy to explain, and there are times that they are really helpful. But while the religious leaders of the day wanted to focus on keeping the order, I want you to see how Jesus responds. You see, the first thing that we can see is that as he gets closer to the city, we see this verse. It says, as he came closer to Jerusalem and he saw the city ahead, he began to weep. How I wish today that you of all people would understand the way of peace, but now it is too late and peace is hidden from your eyes. I think it is interesting that Jesus didn't start weeping when the Pharisees told his followers to be quiet. He started weeping when he saw the system of oppression that was happening in the city. And the word here, by the way, that is used for weeping, eklausin, it doesn't mean like a single solitary tear. It meant like ugly cry. I mean, it meant like he broke down. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel often talks about how this style of weeping is part of the prophetic tradition of the Old Testament, of the Jewish faith. That oftentimes there would be prophets who would break down because of the injustice that they would see around him. He calls this idea the idea of the divine pathos. It's the idea that the prophets would not only speak for God, but would actually feel God when they saw the injustice that was happening. He said it this way. He said, the prophets discovered the holy dimension of living by which our right to live and survive is measured. They did not proclaim a universal moral mechanism, but a spiritual order in which justice was the course, the pathway, but not the source, the rule book. Jesus, as he's writing to the city, occupies the same space as the prophets here. It wasn't a sense of rules that Jesus was saying you need to follow, but rather a path of justice that he sees and says, we need to be following a path that stops oppression from happening, that the path of peace needs to be accomplished. And I could be wrong about this, but I think part of what this teaches me is this, that the first step of the pathway of love is seeing other people the way that God sees them. Jesus broke down because people weren't seeing each other the way that God sees them. You might be like, but Chris, what does that mean? What does it mean to see people the way that God sees them? Well, fortunately for us, at the very beginning of the Bible, it actually tells us what this is. Like literally, the first chapter of the Christian Bible says this, that so God created humans in God's image, and God saw everything that God had made, and indeed, it was very good. So, look, regardless of if you believe in a literal creation or you look at Genesis 1 and 2 as poetry, and that's fine, the idea of how God sees humans is that God sees us as intrinsically good. God sees you as you are, as enough. God looks at you and looks at me just as we are and says, that's really good. That's really, really good. So if God can look at me and determine that I'm good and look at you and determine that you're good, maybe we can look at each other and see that we're good, right? Maybe we can start from that position. And in so many ways, this runs counter to what many of us were taught growing up, right? We were told the only way to be good was to follow the rules. Good little boys and good little girls and good little other people, follow the rules, right? Follow the rules. It's what makes us good. But I don't think the reason that Jesus broke down was because the people in the city weren't following the rules. He wasn't upset that they were jaywalking or that the kids at the Jerusalem school were using something other than a number 2 pencil when they filled in the Scantron. Instead, it seems that the reason that he cried was because the system had turned against the path of peace. This idea of peace, by the way, for the Jewish custom, this idea of shalom, it's a way deeper peace. It's not just like an absence of war. It's the type of peace that's like sitting on a rock as the waves crash on the ocean and you can feel the sun warm your skin and the weather in Missouri is no longer drunk and you're like, this feels good. It's that. It's that like soul peace. In so many ways in our society, we have soul-crushing space, don't we? Because we don't see each other as initially good. We're all about what's good for my people or my family or my country or my nation, not what's best for everyone. But just as acknowledging where people are isn't enough, I want you to see where this story ends with Jesus. It says this, then he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling things there. And he said, it is written, my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it into a den of robbers. What Jesus saw when he looked at the city was that things were broken. But he didn't just decide to tell his friends who already agreed with him. He didn't post on Facebook so that his friends who he'd already self-selected in could give them a thumbs up. Instead, he took action. He went to the temple, the place where those in power were hurting others. And what it says here, the reason for it, is so wild to me. I'd never heard it this way, but Dr. Amy Jill Levin framed it in such a unique way. I want you to hear this because it's so good. She says, a den of robbers, sometimes translated as a den of thieves, is not where robbers rob. Den means cave, and a cave of robbers is where robbers go after they have taken what does not belong to them to count up their loot. In other words, he wasn't coming to the temple to flip over tables because the temple itself was corrupt, but rather because the temple was washing it. It's the prayer breakfast before we go on wars of choice. Right? Let that sit for a second. People were going out and taking advantage of the system and then coming in and whitewashing what they were doing. It seems like that was what frustrated Jesus. And so Jesus disrupted the system. He turned over the tables. He said, this is not the way it's supposed to be. My house is a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of thieves. So the last thing I want you to think about today is this, that the path of love often requires more than just thoughts or prayers. It often requires action. You see, the rule book allowed that to happen. The rule book said, follow the system, go to the synagogue, do the things that you're supposed to do, but the rules weren't life-giving. So the path that Jesus walked was the path that prioritized ending oppression instead of the path that consistently said we just have to follow the rule book. So the question comes up, which I think is a very valid question this morning. When is the right time to follow the rules? And when is the right time to follow the path? And that is a really good question. And I'll be honest with you. Just like I don't know everything that's going on with AI, I don't have a perfect answer here for you. I don't. I wish that I could tell you that we need to follow a certain, but here's the thing. If I said that, all I would be doing is recreating a set of rule books for you, right? And I believe that you're smart enough to figure that out on your own. I can give you some guidance, though, just in the same way that I think there is guidance that maybe we need on AI. Maybe there's some guidance that we need as we think through this. There are processes and questions that we can ask ourselves because honestly, sometimes the questions are more important than the answers anyway. We can't just follow certain rules and know that everything will react in specific ways. But maybe as a guideline, I would say this. When the rules are designed to create fairness or justice or kindness or peace or equity, then they're probably moving in the right direction. But when they are designed to give breaks to those who've already had all the breaks, when they are designed to just keep those in power already in power, when they create discrimination, when they look at someone and say, you don't belong here. What are you doing here? This isn't a space for you. When rules look at someone and say, you do not have the divine within you, that's a bad rule. So instead, follow the path of love. Maybe that's the time when it's time for action. That action can look like a lot of different things. It might look like something very different for you. And one of those actions might look like this. It might look like you texting in a question and finding a time for you and me to go get a cup of coffee and talk through what that action looks like specifically. It might look like volunteering with Kids Venue and doing some of the awesome things to support the students who are not the next generation of where this is going, but where it's going right now, y'all. And it might look like you taking very specific action to stand up and say, no more of this. Wherever that action takes you, I'm just thankful that you don't have to do it alone and that I don't have to do it alone because we all get to do it together. With that said, there are some people this morning who have joined us online and we're doing this together this way. And so I want to finish today by thanking you for joining us online and tell you that we'll see you next week. With that said, I do have a couple of quick announcements this morning as we get out of here that I want to give you some information on. The first of which is that next Sunday is Easter, y'all. If this is regularly where you attend